All right, welcome back to WorldSkills Croatia 2025. Let me see, are you still awake and focused? If you are, put your hands together for this conference. So we've had 3 excellent breakout sessions. I'll give you a very quick overview of what was discussed, actually highlights, not overview. And then you'll interact with each other a bit on that. And after that, we'll have our second and final panel of the day. So in session 1, titled Supporting Technical and Vocational Skills for the Future Economy, we asked, are TVET systems fit for the future? And there was good and bad news here. The bad news is, no, they are not. And the good news is they are moving in the right direction. The group also discussed the importance of soft skills, including critical thinking, and the relevance of industry co-design of curricula. Session number 2, which was about circular economy. They discussed how skills can boost and are a necessary condition to achieve circular economies worldwide. They also touched on inspiring good practices in this field, such as the green projects of Grohe, you know them if you have visited a bathroom somewhere in this world, and they freely distribute state-of-the-art equipment to plumbing schools. Finally, the attractiveness of TVET breakout session, which talked about the importance of highlighting to young people the relevance, purpose, space for opportunity, and chance to innovate in TVET. This is how you get them in. And you do need to realize when you approach young people, they are digital natives. This is how they are, and this is how you should approach them. We also touched in that breakout session on the excellent good practice here in Croatia of new curriculum developments in TVET, which the minister already touched on in the morning. These are our quick highlights. Now I ask you, in 2 minutes, that's all you get, to turn to someone that you don't know yet and to tell them what is your key takeaway from the workshop you participated in. Go ahead. Can we have a little more light in the room? Perfect. Perfect.
Ама човек ми запише стига нов мил, што го работим заедно с Бог. Заборавила да го прати муј. Затоа е вратен, пошто да ме ги дадува става Стите работи, съм подмина тежко. Па ги дистрибуира. Стите пријал, колко постав добро учене си викра, не викра, што се пријал. Това ми ама никак не сме така да не кажем, но беше пита да завршена щитата направа. Защо? На комуникация. Which wasn't specific.
Can I say, give them 10 seconds to fade out the music as light.
Работи главните ми. Ами това. Значи нема това какво и пропишаната изглежда така. Като се ялко, що там, такой закон да се...
All right.
If you like.
All right. Try to conclude your final sentence. And as the lights dim, I thank you very much for your quick exchange, which is to stimulate networking. After all, we have to do this together. And these gentlemen in the front and the gentlemen in the back as well have exchanged cards in this quick exchange. Thanks again. may I please invite the panelists to come forward and take their seats? Welcome. Welcome, Sharon. So the title of this session, it's the final one for today, the final panel that is, and hereafter we have a signing ceremony and some closing remarks. This session is titled Positioning Skills as the Catalyst for Strategic Global Priorities. And our esteemed, excellent speakers are the following. I'll introduce them to you. From my perspective, at the other side, we have the President of English Language Learning at Pearson Global and CEO of Pearson UK, Sharon Haig. In case you don't know them, Pearson is a leading global learning company, and they provide content assessment, training, and certification. Then sitting next to her is the coordinator of the Department for VET and Qualifications at CEDEFOP, Yorgos Kostakis. Welcome. And sitting exactly next to me is the WorldSkills Champions Trust representative for the MENA region. She's right now also pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Computational Systems at Zayed University, UAE, Nermeen El-Marzouqi. We're also joined by the Program Officer for Innovation and Excellence in TVET at UNESCO UNEVOC, Mr. Kenny Muscat. And last but not least, let me find, there it is, the head of the Future Skills Unit at ILO, the International Labour Organization, Olga Striecka-Ilina. Now, the setup of this format, the format of this panel is very much like the previous one. I'll have 2 rounds of questions, and I thank the speakers for being mindful of the time. And then I open the floor in the remaining time for your input. This time around, your input will not be gathered through Slido, that is if you want to ask a question, but it's the old-fashioned way, raising your hand and getting a microphone. There might be a Slido poll at some point, however. So the first question, which is sort of a general one for everyone, how do we make skills a catalyst for meaningful socioeconomic progress? And let me first give the floor to Olga.
Thank you, Ali. Pleasure to be here. How we make TVET a catalyst? I think in terms of where we see TVET these days, I have good news for you. It's actually not bad. It has actually very good prospects, because if we look at some of projections, which my organization loves to do, and my unit particularly loves to do, we produce some insights on what the investments into transition to renewable energy and digitalization will bring. And in fact, they are very positive, especially for the mid-skill occupations, which is all really TVET. Also, the ILO produced the insight on how AI, generative AI, may affect jobs. And while it's really extremely disruptive, and while there is a finding that 1 in 4 jobs will be altered in terms of tasks composition, the percentage of those people who will be really highly affected, the occupations that are highly affected, that means possibly even substitution by technology, is not more than 3.3%, which is not really high at all. So that means that everybody has an opportunity if we embrace AI, embrace digitalization, embrace green skills. But of course, these are all challenges, and there is a big elephant in the room, which is called reskilling and upskilling. And I
That's
think
2 elephants.
there are many elephants, but this is a particular important one: reskilling, upskilling, lifelong learning. And I think that for TVET, it becomes essential to be active on this part of the market. It's a real opportunity, not only to serve the youth, but also to serve adults who need to reskill and upskill.
Okay.
Another thing, from all the projections we have, we know that there are winners and losers. We know that gender benefits are not really spread equally, and women are likely to be losers in that competition for jobs because they simply occupy mostly those occupations that are at risk. Therefore, it's also extremely important to include women, so more gender. We spoke about this in the first panel and then in the breakout sessions, and there were some very nice and promising startups as well present in the Changemaker. But it's really extremely important to not let it be, because this change doesn't happen by intent. It really needs the intervention and kind of measures that are really coordinated. It's not really just left for the market to solve.
Right. Thank you very much. We'll return to you, of course, Olga, later on. Let me turn to Kenny now of the International Center for TVET at UNESCO. Kenny, how do we turn skills into a catalyst for inclusive, green socioeconomic progress?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I would say that we have to go back to the definition of TVET, which refers to technical and vocational education and training. Oftentimes we end up reducing TVET to training and assuming that TVET is there just to respond to the labor market needs, which of course is important, but it goes beyond that. There is the education component that we cannot deny this to the youth that are attending TVET programs. When it comes to UNESCO, the UNESCO strategy for TVET has three main lines of action. The first one is the development of skills for individuals to learn, live, and work. The second one is development of skills for inclusive and sustainable economies. And the third line of action is the development of skills for peaceful and inclusive societies. At the moment, we are reviewing we are at the midterm of the strategy, and it turned out that unfortunately there is not enough work going on the third line of action, that of focusing on the development of skills for peaceful and inclusive societies. And I think it is up to all of us here, because we have important roles in the organizations that we are leading, to not forget about this important aspect of TVET.
Very good. So it's actually really broadening the definition, which goes beyond work, economic growth, making money, and technological innovation, and to include certain skills that will promote this progress that we're after. Excellent. Thank you very much for this contribution. I'd like to turn to you, Sharon. Now, your company, obviously, profit is important to you. But beyond that, how do we turn what you do, helping people to learn, into something that contributes to socioeconomic progress?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for the question. I think what we do at Pearson is we have an incredible amount of experience in technical and vocational education, and we truly believe now is an incredible moment for TVET. We know we're facing demographic shifts. You know, we've got AI really reshaping business, and workforces needing to change at a really rapid pace. And I think this isn't just a problem for enterprises, it's actually a challenge for all of us. We've conducted some research recently that demonstrated that in the US alone, there is an estimated $1.1 trillion annually lost from the economy as a result of transitions in employment. So whether that's young people going into the workforce, it's AI reshaping roles within an organisation, it's people needing to reskill partway through their career. All of this is costing our economies a huge amount of money in that sort of lost time working.
Right.
And that's a problem, not just for business, that's a problem for absolutely everyone. So I think, you know, there is a real key moment for TVET right now. I think it's got a huge opportunity to help us as economies, businesses, education systems really overcome the challenges that we're facing right now. And I think, you know, it's on all of us in the system. So it's on policymakers to make sure that we've got a really future-ready curriculum for young people. It's about leveraging that technology to best effect through education, so helping to reduce the administration burden on educators, but also really empower learning and deliver improvements in learning outcomes.
Okay.
It's about incentivizing organisations to invest in training, and then it's about all of us as individuals really embracing lifelong learning. You know, it's not like when I left education and thought, phew, thank God for that, I've finished. You know, we're all going to have to continuously retrain, and it's about making sure that we all as individuals are well prepared for that, and young people have a real love of learning.
Excellent, and thanks for being mindful of the time. Speaking of lifelong learning, Yorgos, what's the skill that you're working on right now?
Thank you. Thank you, Ali. Many thanks to WorldSkills Croatia for the invitation. I've actually heard a lot of what I intend to voice, so let me bring that all together, because it's true that, you know, for Europe to have a future, we need to address the global challenges that we've heard with opportunities for innovation. The only way to do that is by investing in people. That's what the mayor of Dubrovnik said this morning, and this is correct. In our vision, CEDEFOP actually presented a vision during our anniversary, 50th anniversary this year. We preach about Europe needing to change a mindset, opening up, going beyond silos, and integrate skills development into different policies: migration, employment, education, innovation, and other policy domains. It should actually become the backbone of most, if not every, European and national policies. So this is what we're looking at. And in our vision, we're introducing a new term. We call it VET-S, S for skills development. So we're not only talking about VET, we're talking about VET-S policies. And this shift from VET to VET-S indicates it really reflects the changing nature of learning. We've heard earlier on about broadening VET, including skills development. It's not only for young people, it's not only IVET. A big part of it happens in companies, in the workplaces. So we need to pay attention into continuing VET. And to close, this transition to VET-S for us indicates that it is something beyond simply obtaining a certificate. It's about a broader goal of developing people's skills to grow personally and professionally. Excellent. That's how we see it.
Thank you very much. Turning to you, Nermin. So how do we turn or continue working on skills development and TVET being a contribution towards socioeconomic progress beyond career, money, economic growth?
I think since skills are the currency of work, they shouldn't be front-loaded in school and then forgotten. And there's a lot of emphasis in school and formal education and not enough on practical learning. And I feel like this really transitions the upskilling and reskilling, which have been mentioned quite here, into something we need to go back to formal education for, which not everyone has the means and time to do. So investing in the person, investing in micro-credentials and TVET, that acts as a potential universal fabric that will allow all countries globally to excel and have a prosperous economic growth. And if we don't invest in upskilling and reskilling, not just for youth, but for people even in their mid-careers, we risk having a generation that is not prepared for the future of the ever-evolving job market landscape.
Wow. Just to show you that Nermin is not just talking the talk, but she's also walking the walk, what is the latest skill that you're working on?
So one interesting skill I am currently developing is the skill of storytelling. So I come from a STEM background. I study computer science, but seeing very inspiring role models, especially in TV, and today, Ali, I aspire to also be a journalist with an interdisciplinary background where I can share information about the recent developments in technologies such as AI and make them more accessible to the public.
Brilliant. When do you expect to be able to tell your stories in Mandarin?
Very soon. I'm actually learning Mandarin as well. So, I mean, some actually might argue you don't need to do it and you could just use AI and it will do it even perfectly. But I believe that there is so much beauty in going through the process, the ups and downs of it, and really sit with it, especially in that moment where you feel like you want to give up, where you feel like, I can just use this using, generative AI. But it's more about the journey than the destination. And there's so much to learn about in the process that will help us grow into better professional workers, but more importantly, into more competent and resilient people.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sofan. I mean, I think, yes, it's worth an applause. The gentleman in the front was doing this and looking at me. Should I, I'll turn to you, Olga. Can we talk about the link between skills and productivity and what you are seeing at the ILO and how this can be leveraged for sustainable economic growth across the globe?
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, in fact, it was time ago that I brought in this theme into conversation because we were working actually on this report and I brought it here where there is a chapter actually which looks into skills and productivity. It's not actually to say that other chapters are not interesting, they are equally very much interesting. It's our Global Employment Policy Review, which is a flagship report of the ILO, which is trying to answer the question this time, do employment responsive policies work? And one of those employment responsive policies is supposed to be skills development policy. So we asked ourselves, is the human capital theory still valid? We wanted to kind of revisit it. Why do we want to revisit it? Because there is a lot of expectation from skills investments into skills, that this can fix everything.
So the human capital theory traditionally puts a link between productivity, learning, and training. What is, in one sentence, the old approach?
So the classical human capital theory, which is like Schultz-Becker, looks at skills as a kind of an asset. By investing into that asset, you can improve productivity, you can improve competitiveness by investing into individual skills. So that becomes like individual's currency on the labor market.
Sounds like there's nothing wrong with it.
Sounds like there is nothing wrong with it. So now we do ask ourselves, if there's nothing wrong with it, why do we train people or people train themselves, depending on who's paying for that? And then they find themselves not really finding a work or finding a work which is suboptimal compared to the level of qualification they have, which means they don't really work at the full productivity level, which means they are losing, employers losing, society losing, finances invested, but this doesn't really happen. So what we found out is that it's not only investment in skills, but also how you deploy that skill. So it's the whole ecosystem that works for the use of skills. So it's also how skills are hired, what wages they are given, what conditions they work in, so this is the workplace, but also how the dialogue is established on understanding what skills need to be invested in. So skill needs anticipation system, the dialogue between the workplace, labor market, and the education and training providers, the guidance system which comes into that, the platforms at sectoral level, at national level that actually are established to support that, the financing mechanisms that work for this. So the whole ecosystem which needs to be looked at. And from the policy point of view, it's very important because it says actually investing in skills is not enough. We need to invest in the ecosystem, looking at the use of skills or the labor market itself, what is the point of investing into green skills if there are no green jobs, and then employers are not sensitized enough in understanding how this skill will actually help them to improve their manufacturing procedure, for example. So this is just in very nutshell. Of course, it's a bit more complex than I explained it to you, but basically this is the approach.
My final question to you, and we'll return hopefully during Q&A to you, Olga. Briefly, from the great experiences, data that you have at ILO, what is, let's say, a key good practice that you are witnessing in countries working on the ecosystem of learning and training?
Yeah, I can tell you, we have a lot of requests to work at sectoral level. And after working for 17 years for the ILO, I can tell you this is one thing which works perfectly.
At central level?
Sectoral level.
Sectoral
yeah.
level.
Sectoral level.
Okay.
When you have a request from, let's say, a renewable energy sector, or it could be any other sector, very often we work agribusiness, construction, pharmaceuticals, involving mid-scale or high-scale, very different sectors. And then you work together with the sectoral representatives, with employers, employers' representatives, trade unions, but also the supply of skills, so the vocational education training schools, universities that actually prepare the pipeline of graduates to be employed in these companies. And ministries, all administration of education training together to understand what skills will be required and agree right there on what will be the measures to deploy those skills. And then it's like a commitment, a shared commitment by everybody. Measurable commitment.
Very good. Thank you very much. Turning to Yorgos of CEDEFOP. Speaking of measuring, CEDEFOP is the leading European organization on labor intelligence. Enlightening us as to the issues of this panel from the perspective of the excellent data that you collect.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Ali. Skills intelligence is an issue there, is something that we plan to focus on. We see it as one of the 3 pillars needed intervention for a future VET and skills policies. And I'll give you an example. I'll start with skill shortages, because many people...
You start with skills?
Shortages.
Shortages, yeah.
Shortages. And whenever someone hears about skill shortages, what comes to mind? The difficulty of employers filling their vacancies with people with the right qualifications, skills, or experience. Some even blame education and training systems for this gap. But CEDEFOP's analysis complements this view with another side of the story, and a story that shows that skill shortages are also linked with demand-related causes. What do I mean by that? It may be due to either occupations, wages, or working environments that are not attractive enough. Or it could also be related to the recruitment policies, recruitment practices of companies not being effective. So you see there something that complements the traditional view, and it needs intervention. But in order to intervene, we need to understand what is in shortage. Is it the skills? Is it the people? Is it the attractive jobs? And that's why it is vital to look into different ways of understanding skills, intelligence, and what is missing in the labor market. CEDEFOP is doing that. We introduced a number of new tools, looking at big data analysis, looking at skills foresights, looking at short-term anticipation.
Where do you get your data?
We get our data, the big data one, which is very innovative. We scrap millions of online job vacancies in Europe. Millions. That gives us an idea, a clear idea of what is now in demand. And we combine it with other sources of data, and we see what is missing. We do short-term skills anticipation exercises to identify the skills mismatch between what is on offer, what is in demand. And that's exactly the type of mix of different data that we need in such an uncertain future to give us the answers we're looking for.
Can you take us to, and thanks so far, can you take us to innovative ways of learning, in particular for adults?
I'm happy you addressed that because that's the second pillar of our intervention. We need to look at a different way of introducing in strategies how adults learn. We see digital learning platforms. We see generative AI-powered platforms providing new forms of learning. They actually do it outside the institutional barriers that we see in the traditional forms. They introduce flexible learning provision. They introduce experiential learning. All these different pathways, they need to be integrated into strategies for VET and skills development because that's the new way of learning. That's how we actually see it. And most importantly, and I've heard that this morning, we need to see how learning happens in workplaces because companies need to embrace their merit of learning. This is where learning happens. Most of our times we spend it in our work, in the company. So companies need to produce these learning conducive environments where learning becomes a habit, becomes a daily practice.
Right. My final question to you is, we need to move away from, let's say, degrees to recognizing skills. What are some of the good practices that you're noticing there? Because I know Europe is very much focusing on skills recognition.
Yeah, correct. So recognition of skills, and we also call it learning outcomes, to cover a broad learning, a broad range of learning, different types of learning in CEDEFOP. This still remains a challenge. It's a big challenge because there are barriers that institutions put because they do not cooperate between themselves, because they do not coordinate practices. And then, as a result, learners cannot have their learning recognized. They cannot have it valued.
Right.
So what do we need to do? We need to introduce a different kind of recognizing learning, learning through different types, all those pathways I referred to earlier on. Introduce a learning outcomes-based approach, as we call it. And that would allow individuals to accumulate learning in different settings and learning which is stackable. We've heard about micro-credentials a number of times today.
Okay.
So that's one way of doing it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I turn to you, Sharon, picking up on the final point that Yorgos made, and that is we need innovative ways of recognizing, perhaps certifying skill. Yeah. I know you're big in certifications and recognition of skills, in fact, assessment of skills. What are your innovative approaches to this?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, I could talk all day about this, but I'll just pick out a couple of themes that we're seeing. So first thing is around, in a world where technology can complete many tasks in the workplace, actually being able to recognize and certify what you can do as a human is becoming more, not less important. And so we have interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, managing your time, managing yourself embedded within many of our technical and vocational qualifications, including our BTEC qualifications. And what we're able to do is not only certify the program to say that you have met the standards in your occupation or in your vocational area, but we are also badging the recognizing the individual sort of interpersonal skills that the young people are developing through the course. So they're getting both the recognition for the technical, but then also the interpersonal skills. And we have Credly badging, which some of you may be aware of. That's actually a Pearson-owned product, and we're seeing that become increasingly important and recognised, because it enables you to capture, you know, I've been on a training course and I learned this, and you can formally recognise that and demonstrate what you've done. So being able to capture those kind of transferable skills, but also some of the, you know, individual instances of learning that you've completed is becoming really, really important. Another sort of trend that an innovation that we're working on is how you actually assess in the flow of work. So you were talking about the workplace and workplaces needing to change. So we're working on some tools that enable the employers to basically assess people, assess their communication skills as they're working. So I've been piloting this tool, and when I attend a meeting, at the end of the meeting, I get a report card, and it gives me feedback on how well I communicated, whether I was interesting, or, you know, the vocab that I used.
So who writes the report?
So it's AI driven. So it actually listens to me and then produces a report. And I've been part of the piloting of this product, and it's been great, because I'm quite a self-critical person. So I'll come out of an important meeting and think, oh my goodness, like I could have done so much better. And then I get a report card that says, actually, you did this really well. You could have worked on these things. You could have communicated this message
Give us a
more
concrete
effectively.
example, Sharon.
I beg your pardon?
A concrete example of something that the AI agent told you that you did great.
So it's the last meeting I was at, my top word that I used was tension.
Attention.
Tension.
Tension.
Which was slightly concerning. But the feedback that I got was, you did really well elevating the conversation to a more strategic discussion. And many of the people piloting the tool have said to us, I've got better feedback out of this tool than I have had out of any manager for 10 years. Because your manager's not there every time you're working, and you've got this tool just giving you regular encouragement. Think about this next time. And obviously we're developing our approach. So tools like that, where you're getting that regular feedback based on really clear criteria, underpinned by data, and then linked to learning tools on particular topics, is one of the key innovations that we're working on, and really exciting, I think, for supporting learning in the workplace.
Excellent. That's a very inspiring example. Let me ask you, and this is my final question, one challenge that hampers governments, which is not to criticize governments or public policymakers, but this is how it works, is they're sometimes slow to respond to changes, whereas the private sector is a lot faster. So how do you ensure that you are sufficiently agile in how you offer learning trajectories?
As an enterprise ourselves. Yeah, I mean, I think it is a challenge. I think that certainly in the UK, we enterprises do not invest as much in teaching and learning as many of our European counterparts. And I think the role of policymakers, and certainly calls that I join as a representative of, you know, FTSE 100 organisations, is that there needs to be more incentives and flexible ways for businesses to be able to invest in skills development in the workplace.
Excellent.
So that's the key kind of call to action.
Thank you very much. Let me now turn to Nermin. Nermin, when you were preparing for the WorldSkills competition, which was in coding, I believe, you told me that for several months you spend 13 hours per day training. Why?
That's an interesting question, Adi. So yes, as part of our WorldSkills training, and a lot of competitors actually, we had to undergo rigorous training, and it was definitely hard for me because I had to balance being part of university and then going to a vocational training institution to really add to my skills. Now, there is various factors of what really drove me there and what were my motivations. So, of course, you had the honor, I would call it, of representing your country.
The Emirates.
The United Arab Emirates, exactly. And being there and having that honor was really a big motivator for me. And then also the voice and representing and being part of a vocational training institution, which I was always a part of. In the UAE, we have TVET institutions starting from high school, from 6th grade, and we actually implement the BTEC program that Pearson offers into it. And it's something I've done in my high school, and I stopped because I didn't go to a vocational training university, but then I had that as an add-on to my education.
So you went to a TVET high school?
Yes.
Right. How was that?
It was actually a very positive experience. I know in some countries TVET might be seen as secondary to public or private universities in the country, but in the UAE we actually see it as something very prestigious to do, particularly because of the funding that goes to it and the outcomes. So it's very technological. Every student has their own tablet, and we have very rigorous training programs in TVET. And then also, when it comes to the outcomes, a lot of the students go into top universities around the world, and then when it comes to the TVET on the college level, the graduates actually get better jobs, faster jobs, and have better outcomes.
I mean, there must have been a point where, as a child, or maybe your parents told you this is a right choice. Can you take us to that moment? How was that choice made in your family?
So that choice was made mainly by word of mouth. A lot of the students who went to TVET schools, their parents have seen a great outcome in the environment that they were in, and it spread so vastly. And it's something that has been going on for a really long time, since early 2000s. So to me, at the point there where I was taking undergoing high school, it was really the norm to want your kids to go into vocational high school.
What can other parts of the world, like Europe, where it seems the greatest challenge is attractiveness of TVET, what can they learn from the UAE's good practice?
I would say incentive. So actually, when that TVET high school started, we didn't just have the technological, side of things of, oh, I'm going to go. So me as youth, my main incentive would be, I'm going to get a free iPad that I could play with as well. But then also, when it first started, actually, every student had a stipend every month. So it's like you're getting paid to go into that school. Obviously, with time, that stopped because it was just an incentive to get people going. But it wasn't just that incentive. It wasn't just a monetary thing that people got into. It was really having quality education compared to public or even higher institutions, and private schools couldn't match to that level of it. So we see it as a very prestigious thing, and incentives are definitely the stepping stone to encouraging more youth around the world to undertake TVET skills.
What is your next step?
My next step as a Champions Trust is to showcase the impact of TVET that it can have on youth. I believe learning from TVET, that practical learning, especially earlier in your years as youth, because that's really the years where you have the bedrock of your development, the bedrock of learning how to learn. And essentially, if you master that in that stage of life, you as a child, when you grow up, you can master any skill much more easily.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I've already secured an exclusive interview with Nermeen in 10 years. So any other journalists, I'm before you. Turning finally to you, Kenny, and thank you for your patience. Also, thank you for your patience, because after this question, I'll open the floor for you. Now, let's go back to the, let's say, global top-level perspective. How can TVET be a driver for sustainable development across the globe, including uplifting the most disadvantaged individuals and communities in the world?
Yeah, often we talk about leaving no one behind, and of course this is something that we need to continue doing. We also need to be realistic in the potential that each person has. Sometimes I think we give false promises, like leaving no one behind. That means that everyone can become an engineer, everyone can become an electrician, and whatever. And I think the answer is no, we cannot do that. We have to be realistic. And I think career guidance helps us a lot to support the young people take the right decisions about the future. So far, unfortunately, I have not seen great work being done from career advisors. Maybe we need to revisit the model that we have at the moment, because we expect one person, a career advisor, to know everything about each and every job. How realistic is that? Maybe career guidance should be the responsibility of the parents as well. It can be the responsibility of all the teachers based on also the background that they have experienced. So yes, looking at the minorities, making sure that everyone is given the opportunity, but everyone should be given the right opportunity for that particular person. Let's not waste someone's time and also resources as well, because then it can be a huge disappointment. I have seen students, unfortunately, who were told you can do whatever you want, but that's simply not true. Let's be honest with the young people as well. And yes, this is not possible, but there are other options which can be also interesting, where you will excel there. There will be no disappointments there, because you are really, really good into that.
We've already touched on the fact that approaching the matter from an ecosystems perspective is important and highlighting necessary alliances. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, as UNESCO and as UNESCO Innovac, when it comes to TVET, we try to work with the different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Earlier on in one of the sessions, I explained that we have a UNIVOC network with 4 different types of UNIVOC centers. So we have the ministries responsible for TVET. We have national bodies like regulators, for example. We have research institutions and universities, and also then we have TVET providers. We know that when it comes to TVET, the private sector is very important, and we also have work that is ongoing there. At the moment, we do not have membership as part of the network if you are a company, but maybe this is also something that we have to look at into the future, because, for example, if you look at the countries that have the dual TVET system, the private companies are a very important stakeholder when it comes to the teaching and learning. So how can we exclude that? Of course, cooperation is super important, and I think this conference here is one example of how we can come together. Like, there's WorldSkills, there is UNESCO, there is ILO, CEDEFOP, and OECD, and so on. And I think that we should try to, there's so much noise around us that we need to sit down together and come up with one stronger voice. And maybe I can mention this at the moment. There is the initiative by the German Ministry for Education. We have our colleague here. There is the idea to move towards a global TVET agenda, especially post-2030, after the UN's SDGs come to an end. And there is this pilot project where there is ETF, there is UNESCO Innovac, OECD, ILO, and other partners as well, that we are working together, because
including the private sector?
Yeah, including the private sector in some of the project activities, yes. So that we do not replicate what we are doing, but investing time and resources together to achieve for more impactful work.
Thank you very much to all of you so far. Turning to the room, please raise your hand if you have a question or a comment at this moment. Yes, there's one somewhat in the middle. Maybe you can stand up, sir.
Yeah, Cost.
What's your name? You can just talk.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and my name is Constantino Georgiou again. What immediate actions must government take to strengthen TVET and skills development so that young people are truly prepared for the jobs and industries of the future of tomorrow? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there more comments and questions? Yes, the gentleman over there, here at the second row.
Hi there, Oliver again, German Ministry of Education. I've heard, first I want to applaud the idea of a global TVET agenda for post-2030. I think that's very important. Like, there's a lot of noise, but I don't really know where we're going. Now, I would like to mention one thing, which I heard a lot, the tendency to talk about skills.
The tendency to?
To talk only about skills.
Right.
The currency that I work with is qualifications. This may be from the past, but we haven't touched the issue. In my world,
you are dropping truth bombs right there.
This is shocking news.
Or someone was shocked.
No, the question there, of course there's a lot of dynamics, and I think with skills we can resemble them, that's fine. But on the other hand, we need some certainty in the sector, and I feel that losing the idea of national qualification systems means there's lose of trust.
So you're still making the case for qualification,
yes,
perhaps
it
altered.
May sound very old-fashioned, but I just want to throw it at the group and say, what do you think about this idea? Thanks.
Very good. Are there more questions at this point? Perhaps on the left of the room? From my perspective, that is. In the back? Yes, all the way in the back.
Hello, good evening. I'm Azmi Ahmad. I'm from Malaysia. It's just that after a series of discussion, morning session, breakout, and this session, I just wonder, how can we sort of, the status of TVET seems like it is a second class for certain countries. How can we lever up or leverage between this paper academic qualification and TVET qualification in terms of perks and salary, so that in societal status should be at the same par? How can we do some remedies, countermeasure to put up them as at par? That's my question.
Thank you very much, sir. This is what I'll do, since we have 5 minutes left. I'll give each one of you 1 minute, and thank you for being mindful of the time, to give us your final thoughts, and if you want, pick up any of the points that you think are relevant that were made.
I'm happy to start. I'll just pick up on the point around qualifications, because Pearson is a provider of qualifications. In fact, 1 in 5 people in the UK have a BTEC qualification, so one of our technical and vocational. I think I'd make a couple of points. I agree that particularly you need some stability in terms of qualifications, and employers understand them, you know, the society understands them. So you need that recognition in qualifications. But I think what's missing is that it tends to be a single grade or a single level at quite a high level. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to recognise in more detail. Now we have access to kind of ways to manipulate and capture detail and data. We can do more to recognise what's actually sitting under that grade or level or certificate.
So not just the title, but granular transparency as to what you are able to do.
Exactly. So I sort of described in our BTEC qualifications, we're kind of recognising the individual skills that sit within the overall qualification that might be quite substantial in terms of its size. And then I think the second thing is about governments allowing a little bit of flexibility, so that whilst you have that stability, you can evolve and adapt the qualifications more quickly, I think, than our many systems allow us to do currently.
Thank you very much. Olga, may I give you the floor for your final thoughts?
Yes, let me pick up on that. We live now in a very specific moment. For vocational education and training providers there, it becomes like one-stop shop for verifying the skill level, advising what has to be done in terms of increasing certain elements of skills, and recognizing that partial qualification, some kind of formal way, bringing the person to the completion of this qualification and granting the qualification.
Right.
That is the future, definitely. And one point in terms of what governments need to do, I will just tell you, governments need to start talking to themselves, to other parts of the government. Ministry of Education to Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor to the Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Industrial Development,
right,
and so on, and to the private sector, That is it. And this hasn't changed in the last 20 years. We are not getting there yet.
mainstreaming, not siloing the concerns for skills. Excellent. I'd like to turn to you, Kenny, your final thoughts.
The three questions that were asked, I was thinking that there is one theme which is common, and that is funding. And this morning, funding was also one of the concerns that you raised here in the conference. I think one of the first conferences that I attended around 10 years ago, there was this question about why TVET is the second option. And we keep on asking the same question, and it's still a relevant question. So what have we done in the past decade? I think that we are not able to market ourselves enough to show what TVET is doing, the success stories of TVET, like what we have here with us. Of course, if the government is spending money, there is the question about the return of investment. So how is the individual benefiting from the funding? How is the economy benefiting? How is the society benefiting from funding in TVET? And I think what we can do is to strengthen research in TVET. There is a lot of research happening in education. There is less in TVET. Why is that? We need to provide, like, of course, government has questions, and we need to answer, and we need to answer good, to provide good answers, in my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Speaking of inspiring role models, Nermin, your final thoughts.
So I'm going to mainly target the question on governments. I think the highlight of my answer would be recognition. So recognition comes in two forms. So the first form is recognizing that all skills are equally important for the future. So for example, nowadays, or actually for the past decades, we have seen governments prioritizing STEM and directly relating it to economic development. But that's not really true. If we look at phenomena like climate change or AI, these are all wicked problems. They don't happen. So there are solutions, but there are also problems. So when it comes to climate change or AI, they are not just technical problems that can be solved through STEM. For example, you have an AI developer, and you also have an AI ethicist. So we shouldn't just put STEM on a pedestal and, have humanities or social sciences as a nice to have or something you can read on your free time, because they're all equally important. Now, my second point is inclusivity and recognizing people from all different backgrounds. When I went to the WorldSkills competition and I competed in software development, it was me and another competitor from Singapore that were female, and that was it. And coming from the UAE, in the UAE, we have more STEM graduates, females, than males. So you can imagine when I walked into that competition hall, I was so shocked, and I couldn't imagine myself being in the shoes of another female in a different part of the world where her doors of getting into STEM were closed before they were even opened. And we need more incentives for women to take part in different fields, including STEM, but also have inspiring role models that they can look up to for the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's good to hear this, because in the talk about women falling back, the challenges, the problems, we sometimes forget that it is possible to, in fact, include them even more than men. Finally.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ali. I'll touch upon the two questions we've heard, one about qualifications and another one about what do we need to do in the future to prepare for future jobs and go for innovation. So in relation to qualifications, in my opinion, in CEDEFOP's opinion, even in my department's opinion, I coordinate the work on VET and qualifications. Qualifications remain important. All this discussion about skills development, Oliver, is about raising awareness on non-formal learning and actually bringing those two sides closer together. And the way we see this happening is through recognition, the third pillar I was referring earlier on. And when one of the participants talked about the national qualifications framework, this is where we see finally attention of national qualification frameworks opening up and including in their recognized learning happening outside institutional barriers, non-formal learning. And I think this is where these two need to talk to each other. On the second question, I see innovation happening not only on what we teach, but how we teach it. And this is where we need to bring in the discussion about teachers' readiness. They cannot do it on their own. And this is where we can get the assistance of the world of work, bring in companies, because this is where innovation happens.
Okay.
Bring them into education and training, get them work together on what is ahead of us.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Olga, Kenny, Yorgos, Nermin, and Sharon. Thank you very much.